time-traveling turkeys. I mean, were you sort of sold on that concept as soon as you got the pitch? I know they'd been working the project a little bit before.
They had, but you know, they had taken that premise in a different direction, and just a little bit. I mean, it didn't go that far. And you know, all movies have that sort of, you know, sometimes there's, you know, different directions get tested out. But I think, you know, I first heard that premise when I was working on my previous movie, and I thought it was a brilliant idea. I was just like, that is an amazing idea. You could go a lot of places with that. And I was instantly sold on the idea. And when I was, you know, I think Craig Mazin told me about the project, and he's a producer on the movie. And he told me about the premise again, and I was like, that's great. That's a great idea. And I went and had a meeting with him, and I was like, this is a really good idea. This could go a long way. So I teamed up with Scott Mosier, who, you know, for both of us, it was like, you know, Scott comes from, you know, making 12 or whatever Kevin Smith movies. So it was like, you know, we wrote the script together, and you know, he produced it and I directed, and we were like a dynamic duo, and it was a blast.
The film has a lot of references to other time-traveling movies. I saw a little Bill and Ted's in there, a little Back to the Future. I mean,
well, there's that one line of dialogue that goes, Burley, maybe if we do this right, they'll take us back to the future so we can have an excellent adventure. I think that's the only one, isn't there?
Yeah, no, that line, but I mean, there's obviously some other influences there. I mean,
oh, of course.
What are some of your favorite time-traveling movies? And that
Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is like right up there. Obviously, Back to the Future is a great one. I mean, I love Bill and Ted. I think it's just such a smart movie. It's just such a great, and it stands up in court. I mean, it's still funny, you know. But you know, I always thought time travel was a fascinating premise. It's just so limitless. And one of the things nobody ever thinks about is that, like, it's kind of time and place travel, because you could take the time machine and go anywhere at any time, you know, like you're not limited to, like, you'd think that you'd get in the egg and it would just blast us back to the Four Seasons Hotel site in, you know, 1621, and we'd just be like a bunch of trees. But no, you can take it wherever you want as well.
With animation being your background, did you do any work with the character designs? Were you involved in that?
Yeah,
okay.
I was. Sizell Chesterfield, who designed the characters, is a really close friend of mine, and we worked very closely together to do it. And he doesn't do much; he does very little, so it was tough to get him to do it. But we had a blast doing it, and the really difficult thing was turkeys are ugly. They look like melted candles, so you know, they look really gross. They're really ugly animals. Sorry, turkeys, but they are. So the difficulty was in making them appealing looking, making them turkeys, but making them appealing looking, and kind of crafting that design. And one of the first things I thought was, I can't put that like leather sack skin on their head. I mean, you could, but it would be very unappealing. So I chose baby chick fuzz, because it looks like you just want to pet them, you know?
Yeah.
And it just made them appealing. There's something really amazing to me about really cute, really appealing looking characters, like throwing each other under the bus and, like, you know, trying to kill each other.
Tell me about casting Owen and Woody in the movie. Were they already involved when you came on, or? Well,
yeah, they were. Well, they were involved because they are friends with Tom that owns Real Effects, and he's very good friends with a lot of guys at Real Effects, and they all wanted to do a movie together, and that's sort of how that happened. And then, you know, so those guys were involved. And then Amy, you know, I've worked with before, and we get along great and have, you know, really like working together. So that really was a natural fit too. And then George Takei was like obvious.
Yeah.
Who else could do that voice?
Well, I saw from your Instagram photos that you loved working with.
I love George. Yeah, George is a great dude. He's a real pleasure to work with. He's very funny. He's very talented. And I mean, with Steve, the thing was with Steve is because I think he came out as a great character, and I think, you know, you can't play him like the GPS system in a car or something. He had to be his own character, and so we started him in the picture. We started him a little bit more even, and then he was like, "Oh, come on!" You know, he really became Reggie's guide, and he really kind of embodied the way, you know. George is such an appealing guy with such an appealing voice, and he's such an earnest, great dude that I think, you know, we just sort of let George naturally populate Steve, and he really resonated with characters because he doesn't have a face, he doesn't have any arms and legs, he can't gesticulate, he just glows and is a egg shape. So, you know, it's really a lot tougher than it looks. I like write in the booth, you know, that's part of my writing process, is coming up with stuff off the cuff and reactive comedy. I think that's the freshest, most awesome stuff, because you get a guy like Owen Wilson, who's a great writer and a naturally funny guy, or Woody, who's a naturally funny guy, or Amy, who's like whip smart and fast as hell. That's why Amy and I like working together, because we'll just take the scene framework that we know, the boundaries of the scene, and we'll just start going and not stop and just let it see where it goes. I think oftentimes, for me personally as a filmmaker, that's where I get the best comedy, is utilizing these people's great talents. I can sit in a room, or Scott and I could sit in a room or whatever and write good jokes, but sometimes they're just the premise for a great joke, and then you just let these people go and give them the opportunity to truly exercise their skills, and you get magic stuff.
Tell me about collaborating with Real FX and those guys.
You know, those guys have been doing great work for a long, long time, and they just never made a feature. I mean, they've worked on a lot of features. And so the system was in place, but you know, when you make the whole movie from start to finish with story involved, the production pipeline has to have a two-way street in it. And so those guys were ready to go. I mean, that studio has so many talented people and so many gifted artists and technical people, and you know, it was just a really great opportunity to be with a group of people. Like, I was at Pixar on the first movie there, and that was a really exciting, amazing time. And I remember it so fondly, because I was so young, you know, and it was like, wow, this is great, even though we're in a strip mall in Point Richmond. And I think with Real Effects, it was like a really exciting time to do the first feature with them, you know, and make a movie with them. And they're really great people that really, really want to do great stuff. And so it was a really exciting time to be there, because they had the technical chops. And so, you know, they were very open to Scott and myself, and Aaron Warner joined, and it was a really great experience. They're great people.